You didn't withdraw anything at all.
I appreciate the offer, sir, but I don't need the money.
Amika's hand froze in mid-air. The credit card lay on Sarah's open palm like it was a dangerous secret. The living room was bright, marble floors shining under the chandelier. But Emeka suddenly felt cold, as if the air had changed. Sarah, his maid, stood straight in her worn black and white uniform. Her hair was messy and tied in a rough bun, but her eyes were calm. Too calm. "Sir," she said softly, stretching her hand further. "Your card." Emeka stared at it like it was a trick. That card was not just plastic, it was power. It was freedom. It was the kind of thing people fought over. He remembered the day he gave it to her. He had placed it in her hand and said, "Use it for anything you want." Anything. He had even smiled, pretending it was normal. But it was not normal. It was a test. Because Emeka had learned the hard way that people changed when money was close. Friends became strangers. Smiles became lies. Even love could become a business deal. And Sarah had been quiet since the day she entered his house. Too quiet. That was why he tested her. Yet here she was, returning it like it was nothing. "No, wait," Emeka finally said, his voice low. "You're giving it back?" "Yes, sir," Sarah replied. Emeka slowly collected the card, but his eyes never left her face. "Sarah," he said, "how many days has it been?" Sarah blinked. 5 days, sir." 5 days. 5 days with a billionaire's credit card, and she was returning it like it was a library book. Emeka swallowed hard. "Did you use it at all?" Sarah shook her head gently. "No, sir." Emeka's chest tightened. He tried to hide it. But his shock slipped into his face. His mouth opened a little without him meaning to. "No use?" he repeated. "Not even once?" Sarah's lips curved into a small, polite smile. Nothing proud, nothing rude, just calm. Emeka turned his head slowly toward the corner of the room where his household accountant, Mr. Adeyemi, was standing with a tablet. Mr. Adeyemi had come earlier to show Emeka the weekly spending report. Emeka had asked him to include the card activity too, because Emeka wanted proof. Now Emeka's eyes demanded an answer before his mouth even spoke. Mr. Adeyemi cleared his throat, tapping the screen. "Sir, I checked it this morning. There were no transactions. None." Emeka's heart dropped and rose at the same time. A part of him felt relief, another part felt fear. Because if Sarah did not use the card, then what kind of woman was she? And why did she look like she was carrying sadness that did not belong in a maid's uniform? Emeka's hands tightened around the card. He took one step closer. "Sarah, why didn't you use it?" Sarah's smile did not change, but her eyes softened like she was remembering something far away. "Thank you, sir," she said politely, "but I don't really need anything. The money you pay me is enough for me. And I don't have an emergency that needs more money." Emeka stared at her. For a few seconds, the big mansion went quiet, as if the walls were listening too. "Enough?" he echoed. "Sarah, do you know what you could buy with that card?" "Yes, sir," Sarah answered. "You could buy a new phone, clothes, a nice bag, rent for a year. You could even send money to your family." At the word family, Sarah's face flickered, just for a second. Her eyes looked down. Then she lifted them again and smiled like she had quickly locked the feeling away. "I know, sir," she said, "but I'm okay." Emeka felt something strange in his chest, something he had not felt in years. Respect. It hit him so hard that his throat tightened. He suddenly remembered his late wife's voice, gentle but firm, telling him once, "Good people still exist, Emeka. You just stopped looking." His wife had said that 4 years ago, before the accident, before the labor pains, before the hospital room that smelled like medicine and fear, before the day he lost both his wife and unborn child. Emeka blinked, pushing the memory away because it still hurt too much. He cleared his throat quickly. "You can go, Sarah." "Yes, sir." Sarah turned and walked away quietly, her slippers making small, soft sounds on the marble. But Emeka did not sit down. He remained standing, holding the untouched card, like it was proof of something he had forgotten. Mr. Adeyemi shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, should I go too?" Emeka nodded without looking at him. When the accountant left, the house became silent again. Emeka walked slowly to the glass window and looked out at the compound. The sun was bright. Birds moved between trees. The world looked normal. But his mind was not normal. He couldn't stop thinking of Sarah's words, "I don't really need anything." Who says that? In Lagos, where everyone wanted more, where even rich people always wanted more. Emeka's eyes narrowed. It didn't make sense. Not because Sarah was wrong, but because she was different. And Emeka had not met different in a long time. That night, Emeka tried to sleep, but sleep ran away from him. His big bedroom was quiet. The air conditioner hummed. The expensive curtains swayed slightly, yet Emeka's heart refused to rest. He kept seeing Sarah's face. He kept hearing her calm voice. He rolled from one side of the bed to the other. He closed his eyes, but his mind opened wider. Why is she like this, he wondered. What has she seen? What has she lost? At exactly 2:13 a.m., Emeka sat up suddenly. His chest felt heavy, not with sickness, with emotion. He got out of bed and walked to the hallway, stopping near a framed picture hanging on the wall. It was a photo of his late wife, Ifeoma. She was smiling in the picture, her eyes full of life. Emeka stared at it, his heart aching. "Ifeoma," he whispered, voice cracking, "who did you bring into this house?" He didn't expect an answer, but it felt like the house held its breath. Because somewhere in this mansion, Sarah was sleeping in a small staff room, probably on a simple bed, probably with worries she never spoke about. And Emeka, billionaire Emeka, could not stop thinking about her. He hated himself for it. Not because Sarah was bad, but because Emeka had promised himself he would never let his heart move again. After Ifeoma died, he had tried to find love. People had introduced women to him, pretty women, polished women, women who smiled too hard. Some came close to him because they loved his money. Some wanted his name. Some wanted his house. And when Emeka tested them, they failed. Every time. So he stopped trying. Then Sarah came into his house like a quiet shadow, working, cleaning, speaking only when spoken to. He barely noticed her at first, until he started noticing the small things. She never stole. She never lied. She never begged. And now, she had returned the credit card untouched. Emeka clenched his fists. "You can't be this clean," he whispered to himself. He tried to calm down, but something inside him refused to settle. Finally, he made a decision, a serious one. The next morning, Emeka dressed early and went straight to his private study. He sat behind his large wooden desk, staring at nothing for a long time. Then he pressed the intercom. "Tell Sarah to come to my study," he said. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock. "Come in," Emeka said. The door opened slowly. Sarah stepped in. Her maid uniform neat now, her hair still in a rough bun. She stood by the door like she was ready to run away if she needed to. "Yes, sir?" she asked. Emeka studied her quietly. He noticed how thin her arms were, how her hands looked strong, like hands used to work hard, how her eyes carried something deep. "Sit down," Emeka said, pointing to the chair in front of his desk. Sarah hesitated. "Sit," Emeka repeated, gentle but firm. Slowly, Sarah walked over and sat, holding her hands together tightly on her lap. Emeka took a breath. "Sarah," he began, "I want to ask you something." Sarah looked up, cautious. "Okay, sir." Emeka leaned forward slightly. "Who are you?" Sarah blinked, confused. "Sir?" "I mean," Emeka said carefully, "where are you from? Do you have family? What is your story?" Sarah's fingers tightened. Her eyes shifted away for a moment. Emeka noticed. He softened his tone. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm not asking to punish you. I need to understand." Sarah swallowed. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then her eyes became shiny. Emeka's heart beat faster, because tears were coming, and when Sarah finally spoke, her voice sounded like it was breaking from inside. "Sir," she whispered, I went to university." Emeka's brows rose. "University?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I graduated top of my class," she said, tears now rolling. "I studied accountancy. I have a BSc." Emeka felt his whole body go still. What? He breathed. A maid, a poor maid, a woman cleaning his floors. Had a university degree? Sarah wiped her tears quickly with the back of her hand, embarrassed. My parents, they suffered to train me, she continued. They sold things. They borrowed money. They did everything. Emeka's throat tightened. And then, Sarah's voice shook. She paused, like the next words were too heavy to carry. Emeka leaned forward. Then what, Sarah? Sarah's eyes lifted to his, full of pain, and with a trembling voice she said, they were taken away, because of a land dispute in our village. My father was fighting my uncle for our family land, and one day, my parents left the house and never came back. Emeka's stomach turned. Taken away, never returned. He felt his hands go cold. Sarah began to cry harder now, unable to stop it. I searched, she sobbed. I went to police. I begged. People laughed at me. Some told me to forget them. My life just turned dark. Emeka felt tears rise in his own eyes. He didn't even know when his heart started breaking. Sarah sniffed. After that, I lost interest in everything. I couldn't work. I couldn't eat well. I couldn't think straight. I ended up homeless. Emeka whispered, homeless. Sarah nodded, crying, until your late wife found me. Madam Ifeoma found me on the roadside. She asked me questions. She gave me food. She listened. And she brought me here. She employed me. Emeka's eyes filled with tears. He remembered Ifeoma's kindness. That was exactly what she would do, but hearing it like this hurt in a new way. So you've been... Emeka's voice cracked. You've been carrying all this alone? Sarah looked down. I didn't want to disturb anyone, sir. Emeka stood up slowly. He walked around the desk. His steps heavy. Sarah quickly wiped her face, feeling ashamed. But Emeka didn't care. He was staring at her like he had just discovered gold buried under dust. A woman with a degree. A woman with pain. A woman with honesty so rare that it scared him. Emeka took a deep breath. Then he asked the question that changed the air in the room. Sarah, if I offer you a job in my company today, will you take it? Sarah's head snapped up. Her eyes widened. Sir, what? Emeka's voice was firm, but his eyes were emotional. I'm serious. Will you take it? Sarah's lips parted. She looked like she didn't know whether to cry or laugh. But before she could answer, Emeka's office door suddenly pushed open without knocking, and a man stepped in, tall, tense, and angry. It was Mr. Adeyemi, the accountant. His face was pale like he had seen a ghost. Sir, he cried urgently, I'm sorry, but this is an emergency. Emeka turned sharply. What emergency? The accountant's hands shook as he held up his tablet. Sir, he said, voice trembling, someone used your credit card this morning. Emeka's heart dropped. He spun toward Sarah. Sarah was already on her feet, shocked, shaking her head. I didn't, sir. I swear. The accountant swallowed hard and added the words that hit like thunder. And it wasn't a small transaction. It was 50 million naira. Emeka's blood ran cold because the card was still in his hand. So who used it? And how? Emeka's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, nobody moved. The study felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were closing in. Sarah stood frozen in front of the desk. Her hands raised slightly, her eyes wide with fear. Mr. Adeyemi stood near the door, clutching the tablet like it might explode. 50 million? Emeka repeated slowly. His voice was calm, but only because shock had stolen all other emotions from him. Yes, sir, the accountant said quickly. It happened early this morning, one single transaction. Emeka looked down at the credit card in his hand. Then he looked at Sarah. Her lips were trembling. I didn't do it, sir, she said in a shaking voice. I swear on my parents' lives, I don't even know how to make such a transfer. Emeka studied her face carefully. Fear was written all over it, but not guilt. Not the kind of fear that hides lies. This was raw fear. Honest fear. Emeka raised a hand slowly. Calm down, Sarah. She nodded quickly, wiping tears from her cheeks. Emeka turned to the accountant. Where was the money sent? Mr. Adeyemi swallowed. To a private account, sir. A newly opened one. Name? Emeka asked. The accountant hesitated. Say it, Emeka said firmly. It's under the name Sarah Adebola. The room spun. Sarah gasped. That's my name, she whispered, horrified. But I didn't open any account. I don't even have money to open. Her knees gave way. Before she could fall, Emeka rushed forward and caught her. Easy, he said, holding her arms. Sit down. He guided her back to the chair, his own hands shaking slightly now. Sarah covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Sir, someone is trying to destroy me, she cried. Please believe me. Emeka looked into her eyes. For a long second, the world disappeared. He remembered all the tests he had used on people before. He remembered the lies he had seen, the acting, the fake tears. This was not acting. Look at me, Emeka said softly. Sarah lifted her face. I believe you, he said. Her shoulders collapsed in relief, and she broke down completely. Emeka straightened and turned sharply to the accountant. Freeze that account immediately, he ordered. Call the bank manager, now. Yes, sir, Mr. Adeyemi said, already dialing. Emeka paced the room, his mind racing. Someone had used his card. Someone had opened an account in Sarah's name. Someone wanted her framed. But why? And how? Emeka stopped walking. One thought hit him like lightning. He turned slowly toward Sarah. Who knows your full name? He asked. Sarah wiped her face. My parents. Some people from my village. And Madam Ifeoma. Her voice cracked at the last name. And since she passed, Emeka asked gently. Sarah shook her head. No one else. I never told anyone here my full name. Even my ID. I lost it when I became homeless. Emeka's jaw tightened. This was not random. This was planned. Mr. Adeyemi returned to the desk. Sir, the bank manager is on the line. The account is frozen for now. The money hasn't been withdrawn yet. Emeka exhaled slowly. Good, he said. That gives us time. Sarah looked up weakly. Sir, am I in trouble? Emeka walked back to her and knelt in front of her so their eyes were at the same level. Listen to me, Sarah, he said clearly. No one is arresting you. No one is sending you away. Not on my watch. Her lips trembled. Thank you, sir. Emeka stood and turned to the accountant again. I want a full investigation, he said, quietly. No police yet. I want to know who did this. Yes, sir. When the accountant left, the room grew quiet again. Sarah sat there, drained. Emeka watched her for a long moment. Then he said something that shocked her again. The job offer still stands. Sarah looked up sharply. Sir? I meant what I said earlier, Emeka continued. I want you in my company. Not as a maid, as staff. Sarah shook her head in disbelief. After all this? Especially after this, Emeka replied. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Tears filled her eyes. Why? She whispered. Emeka hesitated. Because the truth was dangerous, but he chose honesty. Because someone who could walk away from my credit card is not a thief, he said. And because my late wife trusted you. That's enough for me. Sarah nodded slowly, crying quietly. The next morning, the mansion felt different. Sarah woke up early, her heart pounding. On her bed lay neatly folded clothes, new clothes, a navy blue corporate dress. Simple, elegant. A small note rested on top. For your first day. Emeka? Sarah pressed the note to her chest and cried silently. She dressed carefully, her hands shaking as she buttoned the blouse. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She didn't look like a maid. She looked like the woman she used to dream of becoming. Downstairs, Emeka was already waiting. When he saw her step into the living room, he froze. For a second, his breath left him. Sarah stood tall, nervous but graceful. Her hair was neatly packed. Her face was clean and simple. She looked powerful. You look ready, Emeka said quietly. Thank you, sir, Sarah replied. Call me Emeka, he said suddenly. Sarah blinked. Sir? At work you can still call me Mr. Emeka, he added. But here, Emeka is fine. Sarah nodded slowly. Okay, Emeka. Something shifted between them at that moment. Neither spoke about it. At the office, whispers followed Sarah. People stared. Some smiled politely, some frowned. a former maid now walking into the finance department. Not everyone liked that story. But Sarah worked. She worked hard. Numbers came back to her like old friends. Reports made sense. Mistakes jumped out at her eyes. Within weeks, people began to notice. Within months, Amika began to trust her. He made her his personal assistant. They traveled together for meetings. She sat beside him in boardrooms filled with powerful men, and every time she spoke, the room listened. But success has enemies. And somewhere in the shadows, someone watched Sarah rise with hatred burning in their chest. One evening, after a long trip, Amika and Sarah sat in the private jet, the lights dim. Sarah laughed softly at something Emeka said. Emeka paused. The sound hit him deeper than he expected. It had been years since his home felt alive, years since laughter sat comfortably beside him. That night, Emeka didn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't pain keeping him awake. It was realization. Weeks later, Emeka did something he never planned. He knelt, right there in his living room. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth as tears flooded her eyes. "Sarah," Amika said, his voice shaking, "will you marry me?" She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She nodded, crying. "Yes, yes." The world exploded with reactions. Some people celebrated. Others whispered. She planned it. She took advantage. She used his wife's death. But Emeka didn't listen. They married in a wedding so grand it shook the city. And for a while, life was peaceful. Years passed. Love remained. But something was missing. No child came. Hospitals, tests, doctors. "Nothing is wrong," they said again and again. Still, nothing happened. On their 10th anniversary, they sat together on the bed, holding hands, tears flowing freely. "We still have each other," Sarah whispered. "Yes," Emeka replied, "with or without children." They hugged, crying quietly. But outside that room, a woman stood in the dark hallway, listening. Her face was twisted with rage, and in her hand was a brown envelope filled with documents, documents that could tear Sarah's world apart. She smiled coldly and whispered, "Let's see how long this love survives." Sarah woke up before dawn with a strange heaviness in her chest. She lay still beside Amika, listening to his slow breathing. The room was quiet, but her heart felt loud, as if it was warning her about something she could not yet see. 10 years. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of love, travel, laughter, pain, prayers, and unanswered questions. She turned her head and watched Amika sleep. His face looked peaceful, but she knew better. Even in sleep, his brows were slightly drawn, like a man who carried weight he never put down. Carefully, Sarah slipped out of bed and wrapped a robe around herself. She walked to the window and stared at the early morning sky. "Why does it still hurt?" she whispered. She had everything many people prayed for: love, comfort, respect. Yet the empty space where a child should be felt louder with every passing year. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned. "Yes?" she called. The door opened slowly, and their housekeeper stepped in. "Madam, sir's breakfast will be ready soon." "Thank you," Sarah replied gently. As the woman turned to leave, something slipped from under her arm and landed softly on the marble floor. Sarah frowned. "What's that?" she asked. The housekeeper froze. She looked down slowly. It was a brown envelope. Thick. Old. Sarah bent and picked it up. "There was no name on it," the housekeeper said quickly. "It was dropped at the gate early this morning. I was told to give it to Sir." Sarah's fingers tightened around the envelope. Something about it felt wrong. Too heavy. Too quiet. "I'll give it to him," Sarah said. The housekeeper nodded and left. Sarah stood alone in the room, staring at the envelope. Her heart began to race. She told herself she was overthinking, that it was probably business documents or mail. Still, she didn't open it. She carried it to the dining table and placed it neatly beside Emika's seat. Emeka walked in minutes later, dressed in casual clothes. "Morning," he said with a tired smile. "Morning," Sarah replied, forcing a smile of her own. He noticed the envelope immediately. "What's that?" he asked. "It was dropped at the gate," Sarah said. "No name." Emeka frowned slightly and picked it up. He opened it casually. then froze. Sarah noticed the change in his face instantly. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft. Emeka didn't answer. He slowly pulled out the contents: photographs, documents, printed papers. His eyes moved quickly across them, then slower, then stopped. Sarah felt her stomach twist. "Emeka?" she whispered. He swallowed hard. "These," he said slowly, "these are records from your university." Sarah's heart skipped. My university?" she repeated. "Yes," Emeka said, still staring at the papers. "Your transcripts, your graduation record, your full academic file." Sarah's confusion deepened. "But you already know I went to school." Emeka nodded. "I do." He turned to the next page, then his hand began to shake. "And this," he said, his voice dropping, "this is a birth record." Sarah's breath caught. "What birth record?" she asked, standing up. Emeka didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked at her. Then asked quietly, "Sarah, are you sure your parents were taken away because of a land dispute?" The question hit her like a slap. "What?" she gasped. "Why would you ask me that?" Emeka stood slowly. "These documents say something else," he said. Sarah's legs weakened. Her memories rushed back. Her parents leaving, the fear, the confusion, the silence that followed. "I told you the truth," she said, her voice shaking. "Why are you doubting me now?" Emeka raised his hands quickly. "I'm not accusing you. I just—" He paused, then spoke carefully. "These papers say your parents changed your identity." Sarah shook her head violently. "No, that's not possible." "They say your name was changed when you were a child," Emeka continued. "They say you were moved from one town to another. They say your birth record was sealed." Sarah felt dizzy. "That's a lie," she whispered. "My parents loved me. They wouldn't hide something like that." Emeka hesitated, then pulled out the last item, a DNA test request form, not completed, not signed, just prepared. Sarah stared at it. Her mouth went dry. "Who sent this?" she asked faintly. Emeka looked down. "There's no name, but the sender wants me to do a DNA test." "With you?" The room felt like it lost all air. "A DNA test?" Sarah repeated. "Yes." "For what reason?" she asked. Emeka didn't answer, because the implication sat between them like a ticking bomb. Sarah stepped back slowly. "You think—" she began, then stopped. "You think I'm lying about who I am?" "No," Emeka said quickly. "I think someone wants us to doubt each other." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "After 10 years," she cried, "after everything we've been through." Emeka walked toward her. "Listen to me. I trust you." "Then why are you holding those papers like they matter more than my words?" she asked, her voice breaking. Emeka stopped. He had no answer, because doubt, once planted, did not need permission to grow. That night silence filled the mansion. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence. Sarah lay on her side of the bed, her back to Emeka. Her mind replayed every moment of her childhood, every memory, every story she believed. What if— The thought crept in, unwanted. What if something was hidden from me? Emeka stared at the ceiling. He hated himself for letting a piece of paper shake 10 years of love, but he also knew this was not random. Someone wanted to hurt them, and whoever it was knew too much. The next day, Sarah went to the company as usual. She smiled at staff. She worked. She acted normal, but inside she was shaking. At lunch, a woman she barely noticed before walked into her office, tall, well-dressed, confident. "Mrs. Emeka," the woman said smoothly. "Can we talk?" Sarah frowned politely. "Do I know you?" The woman smiled faintly. "Not yet." She closed the door behind her. "My name is Linda," she said. "I used to work closely with your husband. Before you—" Sarah's heart tightened. "What do you want?" Sarah asked calmly. Linda leaned forward slightly. "I want the truth to come out." Sarah stiffened. "What truth?" Linda tilted her head. "About you, about why you can't have children." Sarah's breath left her lungs. "What did you say?" she whispered. Linda smiled coldly. "You don't know?" she asked. "Interesting." She straightened. "Enjoy your marriage while you can. Because very soon, Emeka will realize he married the wrong woman." Sarah's hands trembled. "Get out," she said. Linda laughed softly and walked out without another word. Sarah collapsed into her chair, her vision blurred. "Why can't you have children?" The words echoed in her mind like a curse. That evening, Sarah arrived home late. She found Emeka in the living room, holding his phone, his face pale. "Emeka," she called. He looked up slowly. "There's something you need to see," he said. He handed her the phone. On the screen was an email, anonymous, with an attachment. Sarah opened it. Her heart stopped. It was a medical report, stamped, signed, clear. It stated that she had undergone a procedure years ago that could affect fertility. Sarah dropped the phone. "I've never seen this before," she whispered in horror. "I've never had any procedure." Emeka stared at her. "I believe you," he said, but his eyes were no longer sure. Outside the house, a car sat quietly in the dark. Inside it, Linda watched the mansion. She smiled and whispered into her phone, "Phase 2 is working. They're braking." The night refused to pass. Sarah lay awake, staring into the darkness, listening to Emeka's breathing beside her. It was steady, but she could feel the distance between them like a wall she could not touch or climb. For the first time in 10 years, they were sharing the same bed, but not the same peace. Her mind replayed the email again and again. A medical procedure. Fertility affected. She had never seen that report before in her life. Never signed anything. Never laid on any hospital bed for such a thing. Yet the paper existed, stamped, signed, official, which made it dangerous. Sarah slowly turned and looked at Emeka's back. She wanted to wake him, to beg him to look into her eyes and promise he still believed her. But fear stopped her. What if she saw doubt again? Tears rolled quietly down her cheeks. The next morning, Emeka left early for work. Too early. He kissed her forehead before leaving, but the kiss felt careful, like a man afraid of breaking glass. Sarah stayed back in the house, restless. She paced the living room, her thoughts spinning. Someone was digging into her past. Someone had records she had never seen. Someone knew how to hurt her where it mattered most. Her phone buzzed. She froze, then picked it up. Unknown number. Her heart began to race. She answered slowly. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, calm and confident. "Good morning, Sarah," the voice said. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Who is this?" she asked. "You met me yesterday," the woman replied. "Linda." Sarah's hand tightened around the phone. "What do you want?" Linda chuckled softly. "Relax, I just thought you might want answers." "Answers to what?" Sarah snapped. "To your life," Linda said smoothly. "To your parents, to your body, to your marriage." Sarah's legs weakened and she sat on the sofa. "Stop calling me," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Leave my family alone." Linda sighed. "Your family? That's interesting." "What do you mean?" Sarah demanded. There was a short pause. Then Linda spoke again, slower this time. "Sarah, your parents were not taken because of land." Sarah's breath caught. "What?" she whispered. "They ran," Linda said. "They ran because they were hiding something." "That's a lie," Sarah said weakly. "Is it?" Linda asked. "Then why did they change your name? Why did they move towns? Why was your birth record sealed?" Sarah felt like the ground was slipping beneath her. "You don't know anything about my parents," she said. "Oh, but I do," Linda replied. "I know they loved you. I know they tried to protect you. But love does not erase consequences." Sarah's chest hurt. "Protect me from what?" Linda's voice lowered. "From the truth," she said. The call ended. Sarah dropped the phone. Her hands shook violently. She pressed her palms against her ears as if she could shut the words out. But they stayed. They ran. They were hiding something. Sarah cried until her chest ached. That afternoon, Sarah did something she had avoided for years. She went back to her village. The road felt longer than she remembered. Dust rose as the car moved forward. Every tree, every bend brought back memories she had locked away. When she arrived, people stared. Some recognized her, some whispered. She walked straight to the old family house. It was smaller than she remembered. The walls were cracked. The roof looked tired. She stood at the door for a long time before knocking. An elderly woman opened. "Who are you?" the woman asked. Sarah swallowed. "My name is Sarah. I'm looking for information about my parents." The woman's face changed, fear, then recognition. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said quickly. "Please," Sarah begged. "I just want the truth." The woman looked around nervously, then stepped aside. Inside, the air smelled old and heavy. The woman sat slowly. "Your parents were good people," she began, "but they were scared." "Scared of what?" Sarah asked. The woman hesitated. "Of a man," she said. "A powerful man. One who wanted something your mother had." Sarah's heart thumped wildly. "What did he want?" she whispered. The woman closed her eyes. "Your mother," she said, "and later, you." Sarah's breath stopped. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." The woman nodded sadly. "Your mother refused him. When you were born, he claimed you were his child." Sarah shook her head violently. "That's a lie." "Your father didn't believe it," the woman continued. "But the man was dangerous, powerful. He threatened to destroy your family." Sarah's mind spun. "So my parents ran?" she asked. "Yes," the woman said. "They changed your name. They sealed records. They hoped you'd grow up free." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Then what happened to them?" she asked. The woman looked away. "They went back one day," she said quietly. "They never returned." Sarah collapsed to her knees. Her whole life felt like a story she had never been allowed to read. That evening, Emeka returned home to find Sarah sitting in the living room, her eyes red and swollen. "Sarah," he said, alarmed. She looked up slowly. "I went to my village," she said. Emeka froze. "Why?" "Because I needed the truth," she replied. He sat down slowly. "And?" Sarah took a deep breath. "My parents didn't disappear because of land," she said. "They were hiding me." Emeka's chest tightened. "Hiding you from who?" Sarah's voice trembled. "A man who claimed he was my father." Silence filled the room. Emeka stared at her. "That doesn't make sense," he said gently. "It doesn't," Sarah agreed, "but it explains everything." She told him what the old woman said. Emeka listened quietly. When she finished, he ran a hand through his hair. "So someone powerful has been watching your life," he said slowly. "Waiting." "Yes," Sarah whispered, "and now they're destroying us." Emeka stood suddenly. "This ends now." He picked up his phone. "I'll find out who Linda really is." Sarah's heart skipped. "Emeka." Before she could stop him, his phone rang. He answered. His face hardened. "Yes," he said. A familiar female voice spoke loudly enough for Sarah to hear. "Good evening, Emeka," Linda said calmly. "I think it's time we meet." Emeka clenched his jaw. "What do you want?" Linda smiled through the phone. "I want you to hear the truth," she said, "and I want Sarah there too." Sarah stood up. "No." Linda laughed softly. "Tomorrow, 7 p.m. private hospital wing." The line went dead. Sarah grabbed Emeka's arm. "This is a trap." Emeka looked at her. "We're going," he said firmly. "Why?" Sarah asked, terrified. "Because running nearly destroyed your parents," Emeka replied, "and I won't let it destroy us." Outside the mansion, a black SUV waited. Inside it, Linda watched the house and smiled. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "Everything changes." The private hospital wing was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made every footstep sound loud and wrong. Sarah held Emeka's hand tightly as they walked down the long white corridor. Her palms were cold, and her heart beat so hard she felt it in her ears. She had not slept the night before, neither had Emeka. At exactly 7 p.m., a nurse stopped them. "Room 307, she said softly. "You're expected." Sarah's stomach twisted. Expected. They reached the door. Emeka knocked once and pushed it open. The room was dimly lit. Curtains were drawn halfway. A man lay on the hospital bed, his back slightly raised, oxygen tubes near his face. He looked weak, but his eyes were sharp, and beside him stood Linda. She turned slowly and smiled. "Thank you for coming," she said calmly. Sarah froze. The man on the bed turned his head toward her. The moment their eyes met, something inside Sarah cracked. Her chest tightened painfully, as if her body recognized something her mind was not ready to accept. "Sarah," the man said weakly, "you look just like your mother." Sarah staggered back. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't real." Emeka stepped forward protectively. Who are you? He demanded. The man sighed. My name is Chief Raymond Adekunle. The name landed heavily. Linda folded her arms. One of the most powerful men in the state, she added. Sarah shook her head. Why are you doing this? She cried. Why are you destroying my life? Chief Raymond closed his eyes briefly. Because I'm dying, he said quietly, and I don't want to die with lies. Sarah laughed bitterly through tears. So you decided to tear my marriage apart? Emeka's jaw tightened. Speak clearly, he said. What is your connection to my wife? The man opened his eyes again and looked directly at Sarah. I am your biological father, he said. The world stopped. Sarah screamed. No, she cried. That's a lie. She shook her head violently, backing away until she hit the wall. My parents are dead because of you, she sobbed. You ruined them. Chief Raymond's face twisted with regret. Yes, he said softly. I did. Emeka stood frozen, shock flooding his face. Linda stepped forward. Your mother worked for him years ago, she said coolly. He forced himself into her life. She ran away and married the man you called father. Sarah slid down the wall, crying uncontrollably. My parents ran because of you, she cried. And you still followed us. Chief Raymond nodded slowly. I was young, powerful, wicked, he said. When your mother refused me, I swore no one else would have her. Sarah's tears turned into anger. You don't get to call yourself my father, she shouted. You destroyed everything. The man swallowed hard. I know, he said. That's why I tried to fix one thing. Emeka narrowed his eyes. What thing? Chief Raymond gestured weakly toward Linda. Linda is my daughter, he said. Sarah gasped. Linda smiled faintly. And I hated you, Linda said, looking at Sarah, because my father never loved my mother the way he loved yours. Emeka's head spun. So you framed Sarah, he demanded. Yes, Linda replied calmly. I sent the documents. I planted the medical report. I opened the account in her name. Sarah stared at her in disbelief. You tried to make Emeka doubt me. I did, Linda said, because I wanted to take everything from you, just like I felt you took everything from me. Emeka clenched his fists. Then why call us here? He asked. Chief Raymond coughed weakly. Because Linda went too far, he said, and because I don't want my sins to continue after I die. Linda turned sharply. I promised nothing, he interrupted. I want the truth out. Sarah wiped her tears and stood slowly. You ruined my parents, she said. You ruined my childhood. And now you want peace? Chief Raymond's eyes filled with tears. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he whispered, but there's one more truth you must hear. Sarah crossed her arms. What now? He looked at Emeka. You and Sarah could not have children, he said, because years ago, when she was homeless, she was attacked. Sarah froze. What? She whispered. Chief Raymond closed his eyes. She was injured badly. The procedure in that report was real, but not signed by her. She was unconscious. Sarah's legs gave way again. I don't remember, she whispered. Trauma can hide memories, the man said. Doctors did their best. They saved her life. Emeka's heart broke completely. He rushed to Sarah and held her tightly. I'm sorry, he whispered again and again. I'm so sorry. Sarah cried into his chest, shaking. Linda stepped back slowly. I didn't know this part, she said quietly. Emeka looked up at her sharply. You still chose to destroy her. Linda said nothing. Chief Raymond took a deep, painful breath. I have written everything down, he said. Confessions, evidence, my crimes. He looked at Emeka. Use it. Sarah lifted her head slowly. What do you want from me? She asked the man. Chief Raymond opened his eyes one last time. Nothing, he said. Just know the truth. A long beep filled the room. The monitor flatlined. Silence. Linda dropped to her knees, crying. Sarah stood still. She felt empty and free. Weeks later, the truth shook the city. Linda was arrested. Documents were released. Names were exposed. Justice, slow but steady, finally arrived. At home, Emeka held Sarah one quiet evening. You are still the woman who returned my credit card, he said softly. That's who you are. Sarah smiled weakly. And you're still the man who believed me when it mattered most. They held each other, stronger, not broken. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, and though the past had finally spoken, their future was still unwritten. The house felt different after the truth came out. Not empty, not broken, just quiet. Like a place that had survived a long storm and was now learning how to breathe again. Sarah stood by the window one early morning, watching sunlight spread gently across the compound. For the first time in many years, her chest did not feel tight when she thought about her past. It still hurt, but it no longer owned her. Emeka walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You didn't sleep much," he said softly. Sarah leaned back against him. "I slept enough." That was the truth. Since the hospital night, her sleep had changed. The dreams were still there, but they were clearer now. No shadows chasing her, no unanswered questions pulling her back. Truth had been painful, but it had also been freeing. The city had not stayed quiet. News broke fast. Linda's arrest shocked many. Powerful names were mentioned. Files were opened. Some people lost respect. Others lost freedom. And for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt that her parents' suffering had not been completely ignored. One afternoon, Sarah and Emeka stood quietly at a small cemetery outside the city. 2 graves, simple stones, fresh flowers. "My mum used to like white flowers," Sarah whispered. Emeka squeezed her hand. "They would be proud of you." Sarah nodded slowly. "They tried to protect me, even when it cost them everything." She knelt briefly, touching the ground. "I'm okay now," she said softly. "You can rest." As they walked back to the car, Sarah felt lighter. Not because the pain was gone, but because she had finally said goodbye without fear. Life did not suddenly become perfect. There were still days Sarah woke up sad. There were moments Emeka felt angry that so much had been stolen from the woman he loved. But now they talked. They listened. They healed. Together. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Sarah broke the silence. "I don't think I want miracles anymore," she said quietly. Emeka turned to her. "What do you want?" She thought for a moment. "I want purpose," she said. "I want my pain to mean something." Emeka studied her face. "What are you thinking?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I want to help girls like me," she said, "girls who are educated but broken. Girls who fall through the cracks and are forgotten." Emeka smiled slowly. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said. Within months, they started quietly. A small foundation. Nothing flashy. At first, it helped homeless young women return to school. Then it expanded, offering shelter, counseling, and skills training. Sarah was there every day, not as a billionaire's wife, but as a woman who understood. The girls trusted her because she never spoke from a high place. She spoke from experience. One afternoon, a young girl sat across from Sarah, nervously twisting her fingers. "Madam," the girl said shyly, "is it true you used to be homeless?" Sarah smiled gently. "Yes." The girl's eyes widened. "And now you're this?" Sarah laughed softly. "I'm still me, just healed." That night, Sarah returned home tired but peaceful. Emeka met her at the door. "You look happy." "I am," she said. They sat together in the living room, the same room where Sarah had once returned a credit card untouched. Emeka looked at her and shook his head slowly. "You know," he said, "that was the day everything changed." Sarah smiled. "I didn't even know it was a test." "I did," Emeka replied, "and you passed without trying." They laughed quietly. Years later, the house was no longer silent. It was not filled with the cries of babies, but with laughter of children who visited often. Girls who came for holidays. Young women who returned with degrees, jobs, confidence. They called Sarah Auntie Sarah. They called Emeka Uncle Emeka. One evening, after a foundation event, Sarah stood in front of the mirror adjusting her simple dress. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. Emeka looked up. "Regret what?" "Not having children of our own," she asked gently. Emeka walked to her and took her hands. "No," he said firmly, "because love doesn't end at blood." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered. Emeka rested his forehead against hers. Thank you for being honest in a world that rewards lies. They stood like that for a long moment. On their 15th anniversary, Emeka surprised Sarah with a small ceremony. Nothing extravagant. Just close friends, and the girls from the foundation. Emeka held Sarah's hands and spoke clearly. I married you because you were honest, he said. I stayed because you are strong, and I will love you because you chose goodness, even when no one was watching. Sarah cried openly. When it was her turn, she smiled through tears. I returned a credit card once, she said softly. I didn't know it would give me a life. Everyone laughed gently. Sarah looked at Emeka. And I choose you, she said, every day. Late that night, Sarah stood alone on the balcony again, the same place, but not the same woman. She thought of the girl she once was, lost, homeless, afraid. Then she thought of the woman she had become, loved, respected, whole. Inside, Emeka called her name. She turned, smiling. Some tests change your life, others reveal who you already are. And Sarah, she had always been enough. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.